Welcome to Off the Roll. I'm your host, Troy Hirschman, and a happy 2024. It is New Year's Day here at the Wolfpack Farm recording studios, and I'm starting this podcast with none other than Neal Hazen. Neal, when I found out that Neal was being inducted into the Ball State Athletics Hall of Fame on October 25th, we really tried hard to try to set something up sooner than later to do this podcast, and nothing ever worked out. Neal's going through some health issues right now. He's fine, but his schedule was pretty tight. So we finally sat down a couple of days ago at the Knights of Columbus in Muncie, had ourselves a little talk, had a great time doing it, and now I'm bringing it to you here in 2024. So this will be a two-parter. Neal goes over his entire career and some great memories that we talk about. And then he will be back as a guest host with some more podcasts that I have coming up here in 2024. So let's get to it. Let's go off the roll with Neal Hazen. And welcome to Off the Roll. I'm your host, Troy Hirschman. I'm here today with recent Ball State Athletics Hall of Fame inductee, Neal Hazen. Neal, how you doing today?
Doing great, Troy. Thanks for having me on here on the show. It's
we're
great
having
to be here.
Yeah, this is a special episode. We are at the Muncie Knights of Columbus. We're having a little bourbon at 10 o'clock in the morning to do this podcast. So all you folks that have been waiting for this to happen, it should be pretty entertaining as we hear Neal's story and get started with this. So Neal, I'm going to ask you kind of the opening question. Well, first of all, where's your hometown at?
Churubusco, Indiana.
What's Churubusco famous for?
None other than Oscar the Turtle.
There we go. Yeah, we have participated in the Turtle Day parades, haven't we?
Certainly have, yep.
Yeah.
We've brought some unique perspectives to it as well.
Very much so, yeah. Yeah, even at one time, your parents were with fake grandchildren.
That was one of the best, yes.
Yep, that was it. Hey, wait a minute, those aren't my kids. Yeah. Anyway, we'll get rolling. So Churubusco, Indiana. What year did you graduate from Churubusco?
1981.
So, and then what kind of you were obviously. You're involved in athletics, so you had to be kind of an athletic person. What were you involved with sport-wise at Churubusco?
So primarily football, but also track and field, and actually was a manager for basketball, which, like some other folks you've had on the show, being a manager for basketball kind of led one of the coaches to inquire about going to a workshop, which unfortunately I never did, but it did stir up my interest that eventually led to my career here at Ball State.
I think the thing is that it's interesting that we've all had somebody that inspired us to kind of look at those things, and for you is a little bit more delayed because from what I understand, you graduated from Churubusco and you didn't go to Ball State right away, right?
That is correct. I spent 5 years in undergraduate to attend 3 universities or colleges. Started off at Earlham College. Then I went to Indiana, Purdue, Fort Wayne, which is what it was called at the time, and did 2 years and really got into my prereqs there for physical therapy, because my first year I spent looking into more of the sciences of astronomy, physics, and computer science. And that was a day when I was in my computer science classes that everything that's now contained on an iPhone or smaller took up an entire room. And it's just amazing how far it's come. But if I'd have stayed with that, I could have been on the ground floor of coming into the computer science industry and programming. And I remember COBOL. I don't remember how to do it, but I remember that as one of the
that probably came
programming.
Probably came in handy when you're trying to figure out the Cybex a little bit too, when it was going haywire, huh?
It's funny you said that, but yeah, the Cybex, and before that we even had the Kincom. And
yeah.
And those were computer driven, and that background definitely helped me out there. But to finish up, I went from Indiana, Purdue, Fort Wayne, and then got into physical therapy school, and the short-lived program there. I was in the fourth and final class before they decided to drop the program, but got my physical therapy degree. And during that time, I actually had a good buddy that I had first met and known a little bit from Earlham, and we showed up at physical therapy school the first day, he and I looking for the classrooms, and he was the first person I saw, and he got me hooked up because he was also in the athletic training program, and got me over, and I got to meet Don Vogelsang, and then that was my first year. And then our second year in physical therapy school, Rex came in, so I got to meet Rex Sharp and Tony Cox, and the rest just took off from there.
So that guy was Bruce Rueter.
Yep.
And so Bruce was in the athletic training program first and then to physical therapy school, or was it he was kind of doing both at the same time?
He was doing both at the same time. He would have been in athletic training, and at that time it was a minor in athletic training.
Right.
And so he was in the program. He was well known in the program at that time, and he helped bring me over there, and like I say, meet Don and Rex, and first taught me. He showed me how to tape, and I didn't do enough of it to really pick up. So got to throw out some kudos to Dave Jessup here, because he really, when I came into work full time, then he really took me to task and showed me what I needed to do and made me go at it until I got it right. So thanks to Dave too.
Yeah, and that was a time where, I mean, I'm sure that as you were entering physical therapy school, it wasn't, those things were not a priority to learn. You were learning more of kind of the gamut of not only physical therapy for an active population, but physical therapy for nursing home patients and hospitalized patients. And so taping and strapping and wrapping and stuff was just, it was, maybe you like got an overview of it and that was about it. To do that, is that kind of where that was coming from?
Yeah, exactly. After I graduated from physical therapy school, that first year out, I actually worked in a small hospital up by Cherubusco in Columbia City at Whitley County Hospital, and that was a great experience, because for that year, like you just mentioned, I worked with every population you could imagine, from the young orthopedic type injuries to the middle-age back pains and injuries that they sustained, and all the way up to the elderly, and everything from strokes, anything neurological, orthopedic with total joints. It was at a time when the DRGs were just coming into effect, so it was starting to impact the length of stays for people in the hospital, and that led to home health, which I also covered. So that was a unique experience in itself, to be able to go out into the homes and help continue therapy and work with people in that setting.
So was it just you at the hospital? Did you have other therapists that you worked with at the hospital at that time?
I had a supervising physical therapist at that time, and so there were two of us. When I came on board, it made two of us in the department. And I think, like any good department, our office coordinator or receptionist was the one that really kept everything moving and kept it in line, and just had some really good people to work with there. And one thing I even started on the side was I started up a stroke club. So people that had strokes, I went to one of the nursing homes I went to cover. We did that also in addition to home health. But in one of the nursing homes, I started that up, and I'd have 6 or 8 patients and their families come to that, and we just talked about strategies, things to continue, because those folks were still, the majority of the function they were getting back had come back, but just trying to help them learn how to continue to deal with what they had and to maximize it and to continue working on some things to at least maintain what they had, if not improve a little bit more.
Yeah.
But and the other thing I did to further my athletic training interest, because I never lost that, but when I was at Ball State going through physical therapy school, it just wasn't really feasible to be able to do both. So when I was at Columbia City, I assisted Sherry Bibler Skaggs, who was a Ball State alum, which furthered my interest in Ball State. She knew I was an alum from there too at that point. Again, after going to 3 undergraduate schools, and physical therapy was a bachelor's degree back at that time. So I don't have a master's and I don't have a doctorate in physical therapy, but I think experience has been a wonderful thing to teach me a lot of things and things that I could share with others. But I actually worked with Sherry with the football team and a few other sports, and again, just further stimulated my interest in athletic training. So it was a great experience at Whitley County Memorial Hospital.
So was she hired through the school at that time, or was it through the hospital to cover Columbia City?
She was, I believe, coming in from Warsaw, the hospital there.
Okay.
I think that's where she was. And I don't know that, at that time, I don't think there was a contract with the hospital to cover Columbia City. I think she just did that independently as an independent contractor.
Yeah. Because again, back then there wasn't a ton of athletic trainers. This is back in the mid to late 80s, right? I mean, there wasn't
this would have been 1986, 87. Yeah,
it wasn't a ton of high school athletic trainers that outreach thing had not caught on yet for athletic trainers a whole lot. So,
yeah.
So what you're there for what, a year and a half?
Just a little over a year. Yeah, I started in June and then it was in the fall of 1987 that actually it was in, I think, August that Becky and I had gone to visit Bruce and his wife Shirley.
Yeah.
And just happened that Bruce said he had just started a job in Kokomo, so we drove down to Kokomo to see him from the Fort Wayne area, and he had just started a new job there and wasn't really in a position when Rex called him to say that, hey, this contract position that we have, which was through physical therapy services, which became Baxter Physical Therapy, but it was started by Dick Hoover, so that was my first real exposure to getting to know and meet Dick Hoover a little bit. But Bruce told me about the position. He said Rex had called him, and I called Rex then, based on Bruce's recommendation, and Rex was very receptive and said, "Come on down, check things out," which I did. And I walked in. They were getting ready to go play Wisconsin in football, and Tony and Rex were both there out at the football stadium underneath the stands and the small little area they had at the time.
What's going on?
We're doing a podcast.
Yeah.
You want to sit in on it? We got some bourbon.
Come on over.
Yeah.
Troy brought his bourbon, so.
Yeah. You can verify stories if you want to.
Yeah. I remember at that time it was still the old facility as far as over at what had been men's gym, now it was called University Gym before it became Irving Gym. But I had been in that facility with Bruce before, so I really didn't go over there and visit. My main purpose was to visit with Rex and Tony, and eventually I got to meet Cindy McKnight and Mike Ferrara and some of the graduate assistants that were there at the time. But that visit with Rex convinced me that this was a good opportunity. Again, they had started the program with physical therapy services in 1986. It was actually my senior year at Ball State. So there was stuff in the daily news, and we knew something was going on, but I didn't know all the details, but that was when Dick Hoover really influxed our department with a bunch of really nice and new equipment.
Right.
Tables, just dressed it up, and actually at that time took over the salaries and the benefits for all the athletic folks, and provided stipends for GAs and some of the academic folks. And it was a very generous gift from Dick Hoover, and then that carried over into Baxter Physical Therapy as Dick sold the company to Baxter. And so we were actually a satellite clinic for physical therapy services in Baxter. So we were actually doing some billing for services, and they needed a physical therapist to come in to be able to see and treat the patients for billing.
Because the idea was that you had a patient population that was captured, supposedly, theoretically, of athletes that you could bill their insurance and then recoup that money to pay for staffing and equipment and whatnot. Yeah. Theoretically, yeah.
Correct. And and of course Dick Hoover brought Glenn Snow on to work with him, and Glenn's become a very dear friend as well. And but those guys had it set up. We were actually able to bring in some community folks also, which they enjoyed coming into that atmosphere that we were able to treat and bill. But yeah, so Donna Hardesty was the first physical therapist that started that, and she resigned because she was getting married and ready to start a large family, and at least I thought it was large at that time until I had 8 children of my own.
We can get into that, yeah. We'll get into the kids count here in a minute, but yeah.
So it was when Donna resigned is when they needed to find somebody, and that's why Bruce, being a physical therapist, was the first one Rex reached out to, and when Bruce told me about it, and it just seemed like a natural fit. And
so really you're the third time's a charm, right?
Yeah, you're right. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Third time's a charm. It certainly set up something for a long term in that aspect.
Oh my gosh, I never imagined it coming down. Yeah, I thought it'd be a great environment, and I'd really enjoy it for 5 to 10 years maybe. And again, the way things work with families as they grow, and you just never know. But I certainly never envisioned becoming a head athletic trainer when I first got there. And I guess that leads me to how I became a certified athletic trainer, because I was a licensed physical therapist, and I have a pretty unusual story with the way I kind of backed into things. But so as I mentioned, at the time, Ball State had a minor in athletic training, but I already had a bachelor's degree. So at that time, they also still had the it wasn't apprentice. What was the term?
It was an internship.
Yeah.
Internship wrapped to certification.
Exactly.
You had to get so many, what was it? It was like 1,500 hours or something like that, 1,800 hours.
I believe it was 1,500, might have been 1,800.
As opposed to 800 clinical hours that you had to get if you went through a accredited program through
Correct.
the NATA. And it was through the NATA at the time. There was no NATA, BOC.
That is correct.
Yeah.
So I also had to pick up like maybe 4 or 6 additional courses.
Oh, do you remember what the courses were?
Well, one was Tony's class, the intro to athletic training, and again learned how to tape again, and yeah, just all the things you need to know about athletic training was certainly the most beneficial
who was in that class with you? Do you remember that?
Oh man,
I know. If you ask me who was in my classes,
I
can only give you a few names. But
Yeah, I'm trying to look back on that.
Because that was an intro class, so that's 87, 88, 89?
Yeah, it would have been in 88. Yeah, 88. Would have been when I took it, and I can't remember if Chris Robinson was there yet at that time, or, I mean, Dave Weichel. I mean, there's so many from that era.
Yeah.
Maybe Andy Rankin.
88, 89 would have been, because that would have been a year before I got there. So maybe Diane Talbot.
Yeah.
Yeah, you know.
Mark Lido could have been in there again.
That's true. Mark could have been.
I don't think he was, though. I think he and Dave Jessup and that group were already further advanced.
Yeah, I mean, there was probably that entry level. It might have been Weichel, might have been in there. You know, that he would probably remember about that more than anything, really. I don't know if he mentioned that in his podcast, if you were in his intro class or not.
Yeah.
But so you had that probably. Did you have injury evaluation?
No, really, Tony's class was the only one I had to take, and
yeah,
I learned so much in there, but it was funny. I mean, Tony really took care of me in there, but I also taught some of the physical therapy parts for the class. So it was just again such a unique opportunity and unique situation. You have your student teaching.
Yeah, your student is teaching. Your student is teaching the parts of the class that you would normally teach because he's in the class, right?
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. So that was unique. I think maybe exercise physiology may have been one of the classes I had to pick up on, and probably it wasn't anatomy, it wasn't kinesiology. I had all that in physical therapy, but I want to say there was at least 4 classes total that I had to take. So I took those classes, just working in that setting and observing what else was going on, and the hands-on stuff. I pretty easily got my 1,500 hours in.
So who signed off for you to take the exam then?
I believe it was Rex or Tony,
yeah,
or maybe both of them. So I still remember I went over to Granville for the certification exam in January of 1990, and I actually passed it the first time through. So as of January of 1990, I've also been a certified athletic trainer, but I joined the NATA when I started that route in 1988. So I'm about a 36-year member or something now of the NATA.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's been quite a path, and I was a physical therapy first, and then with my passion, athletic trainer, and when Rex had his big opportunity and went to Missouri, it gave me a pathway. Anyway, I'll let you take the lead here.
Let's hold on. I mean, because at that time that you came in, I mean, there was a lot of stuff going on. I mean, not only is you're coming in, this whole new model of how we're going to do rehab and bill athletes for it. We're building a new facility. Oh, by the way, we're moving from a minor to a major in athlete training. And Mike Ferrara's off getting his PhD. Cindy's kind of running the program. Then Mike comes back. Cindy takes off. We hire Tom Weiner in the mix there somewhere. Towards the end of that point before Rex leaves for Missouri there's a ton of stuff going on in athletic training. What do you see as some of those highlights that happened during that time when you were just coming in, from your perspective?
Well, number one, I was just so impressed with. It was a great era of athletic training students that went through it at that point in time. I mean, we've mentioned some names already, but you throw Mike Miller in that mix. We mentioned Andy. We mentioned Diane Talbot, but some of the other ones were.
Okay, they won't kill you.
Joanne Garant. I don't want to miss names here, but
yeah, because there's
Deb was in that mix, and Brett Draper was. I didn't see a lot of him when I first got there. He was off with the Eagles, and then he came back and graduated. But Brett was in that group, and but just the overall quality of all those students going through, and the interaction
I mean, if
that we had with all them. That would be the number one thing. But
I think if you think about it now, I mean, you have like who you just mentioned, Draper, who's still actively participating. You have Doug Dietzel, who's still a practicing physician up in Michigan.
mhm.
You have Angie Miller, who's still practicing.
Yep.
Dave Jessup, Mark Lido, and then you have Dave Weichel and Jeremy Hunt in the early '90s, and Brian Jones, Mike Miller. Trent Stratton, all those, that group right there was just kind of that.
Trump, yeah.
Trent Trump.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think of other people that
I know.
that-
I don't want to leave anybody out, but there's
exactly,
there's too many.
Exactly, yeah. That are still actually practicing athletic training that are still influential in their ideas and stuff. But and I think that's interesting that you mentioned that the students were kind of the highlight to you of what you kind of remember about that group coming through. Unfortunately, I think that has now, we've gone away from that focus in that aspect of remembering the time period, the timestamp of that group coming through. I mean, we remember that time frame by the students that were there rather than the experiences that we had. And we can talk about that a little bit too, but there's just a thing where those people were central to everything going on, basically. The care that was provided. I mean, there was stuff that happened athletically, injuries that happened that you remember and stuff, and rehabs that you participated in, but it still goes back to the students that were there at that time.
Yeah, it really does. And, and also the student athletes, which is the reason that we were there in the first place.
Right.
And I remember a lot of special ones that, unfortunately for them, that they spent a lot of time with me or,
Right.
in the athletic training room, but some that didn't have to also. There's just so many over the years. It's incredible and a privilege to have been part of their careers and part of, what they're doing now.
Yeah.
And, yeah, it's just, that part was just amazing.
Do you have any that stick out to you during that time?
Well, there were some early ones. Dave Budenbaum was a golfer for us and had a bit of a back situation going on, and worked with him quite a bit. And yeah, I've got pictures in my head. I know who I'm trying to say,
Right.
but names are kind of hard to pop up for me. But there was a gymnast. There were obviously a lot of football players. More than one gymnast, but and just somebody from every sport, honestly, at the time. And we had men's track and field and cross country, indoor, outdoor track and field, and saw a lot of those folks too, and just some really, really, really good athletes and some folks that just made the most of the talent they had and worked really hard and, just pushed themselves, and if they didn't make it to the pros in some way, shape, or form, they've become pros at something other than sports, and
Yeah.
then a lot of them stay in coaching their kids or doing something, and it's just again been such a privilege to even be able to follow their careers and what they've gone on to become and what they're doing.
Yeah. That's, I mean, kind of being in that era a little bit in that group, some of them that I remember that I think you probably actively participated in that were probably just really tough cases. Robert Glover is somebody that I distinctly remember with that knee injury that he had and him coming back from that. And we talk about Kevin Furnish all the time. That year was his senior year was really challenging, and especially on the heels of Hank Gathers and having a cardiac issue and stuff like that, is that there was a lot of unknowns that were going on with that at the time too. And gosh, I'm trying to think of some other people that in my time that really stuck out to me as a student that had some challenging stuff. Well, for me, it was Kathy Lewis, the softball player with a shoulder injury that, there was no guarantee that she was going to be able to come back and
Right.
and could come back. And I remember you were very influential with me, even though as students, that was the other thing too. As students, we we were left to our own devices to try to figure some of that stuff out. And you were always a great resource to go, okay, this is what the doctor wants. How would you go about doing X, Y, and Z with this particular athlete? And we may not remember the details of that, nor do we probably want to broadcast that on a podcast. But the idea is that you were always a great resource, as opposed to just another athletic trainer to go talk to. Eventually, you became that other athletic trainer, but that was always something that a lot of places didn't have, was a physical therapist around that had that therapy background that could help you figure out those things to try to help people get back to things. And that was just something that I always thought was really, really cool about having that opportunity. And I was lucky because I went from you at Ball State to the University of Utah for graduate school, who their head athletic trainer was a physical therapist too, and could learn a little bit from that background as well.
That was a big orthotics opportunity for you too,
Oh, yeah.
which you just took and ran with, and have done a great job with that.
Yeah, and that very much was an interest thing that I wanted to learn from, was spend some time with Bill, and I did. I mean, that was part of what part of an internship that I did with him. There was just hanging out in the orthotics lab and learning about that, and that has obviously spurred on, not me necessarily building orthotics, but having a mindset to kind of look at things differently, to analyze those things and figure out what people need. But anyway, back to kind of, so it's and we could talk about all the stuff that happened outside of athletic training, the stories that,
maybe we can't talk about those.
Oh, the podcast, we can talk about those, but that was the era of how could we forget Joe Burton,
Right.
and some of your battles with Joe, and
we battled. Joe was great though. He took everything in stride, and we practical joked each other, and but Joe was certainly unique, but one of the more memorable athletic training students we've ever had, and we can't forget Troy Hirschman and Dwayne Gove that came through that era, as well as some of the great athletic training students we had. And I've learned so much from you, Troy, that I can never thank you enough.
Well, thank you. That's okay. This isn't about me podcast wise, but
you need to podcast yourself here at some point.
I guess I'll have to. I don't know. That's a little bit maybe neurotic. I interview myself.
Well, maybe you can teach me how to do your end of it. I'll interview you.
But yeah, that was always, there's a lot of things to have fun with, and that was the one thing that you and Rex and Tony always made sure it was fun. That we worked hard, but we played hard. Trips to the 500 and qualifications and those types of things. Road trips to Red and Roos. I mean, I can go on and on and on about the stuff that we did to have fun. Same way we've talked about Dave Plum on the podcast before, and the stuff that happened with Dave. But one thing I do want to get, since we're talking about Joe Burton, and we have to share the Noel Lubenkheimer story.
Oh, that was a dandy.
Because it was a dandy, and it was extremely creative, and it was something that has lived on through different types of things. Still to this day at Ball State, I think he's listed as a men's tennis player in the EMR system as a test patient. But we've had to answer some questions about that. Like, who is this guy and what's he doing? I don't remember this guy, but yeah, if you can share that would be awesome.
Oh yeah, and we, and as you were saying, I mean, we just had such a family atmosphere. The camaraderie was incredible, and as athletic training students, we had such a small staff. And you're right, the athletic training students just, got thrown into some situations, but it wasn't without calculation. I mean, as a staff, we'd sit down and discuss, who was really ready to do something, capable, and ready to take that next step in growth. And if it was somebody that wasn't ready, they wouldn't be put in that situation. But it worked well and people learned well for many years. But Noel Lubenkheimer was one of the highlights for sure. You mentioned on the EMR set that Noel still shows up and creates questions. We also went through a period where anytime a free sample was offered, we had it sent to Noel Lubenkheimer. So it'd come into the office and people would go, "Who's this?" I said, "I'll take care of that."
That and Gomez Adams. or Adams Gomez.
Yeah, that was a Dave Plummer there when he came up with Adams Gomez. Who's Adams Gomez? Anyway, that was great. But so with the Noel Lubenkheimer story, and Steve Lubehusen was a big part of how we came up with Lubenkheimer, and I can't remember how we came up with Noel, but maybe it was an offshoot of Neal.
Yeah,
it might have been.
Yeah, it could have been. Yeah.
So, anyway, Joe was just always after me, and trying to outshine me and do everything. So we set him up to outshine me, and one of our observers was a taller young man, and we had him pose as Noel Lubenkheimer, a tennis player who had a neck problem, a sore neck, and so I would treat him a couple times, and Joe was just always around. He paid attention. He noticed I was treating him, and he would try to go talk to him a little bit. And after a couple days of me treating him, quote unquote, Noel Lubenkheimer told Joe that I just wasn't worth a lick, and I wasn't helping him get better at all. And Joe let him know that he could help him.
Yeah.
So behind my back, he started treating him, or so he thought was behind my back. he was in complete observation. But anyway, Joe had treated him, I think, the second day, and he left. He said, "Man, you are so much better than Neal. This feels so good." And he left. And the next day, he came back into the athletic training room, and Rex was there, and Tony was there, and I was there. He walked into the office really ticked off. He just was mad as hell. And this is Noel Lubenkheimer. And he came in. He's wearing a neck brace. And Joe came in, and Joe didn't know what to say. So, Joe, if you're out there listening, this was a great story. You got to know this ranks right at the top. But he came in, Noel came in and said, "You had me so relaxed that as I was walking from this is when we were in the health center. We had gotten moved there.
Yeah, that's right.
Temporary facility. He was walking back over to his dorm across the street. And as he was crossing the street, his neck just spontaneously dislocated. And so he's wearing a neck brace, and he tells Joe, "I'm going to sue you, and we're going to court, and I'm going to take you for everything." And poor Joe he didn't know what to do. And
this guy he lived in a box in Howick Hall. He had nothing, right?
He lived in a box. Yeah.
He lived in a box.
I saw the box.
Yes, I did too. I saw the box too. Yeah, it was nuts. He had a computer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Joe was highly intelligent. He had come to us. I think he had a stint in the Air Force and was a non-traditional student. And Rex, God bless him, brought him into the program. And Joe's legacy lives on because this Noel Lubenkheimer story just had Joe beside himself and really upset. I think we recorded the incident. I don't know that we got a real good tape on it, but we certainly had the audio. Maybe that can become part of a podcast.
Yeah, we can dig that up.
Poor Joe. But anyway, afterward, he found out we were pranking him, and Joe always was a retaliation sort of guy. So I don't remember his exact retaliation on that, but there's a lot of stories with Joe. But that creating and we had notes, clinical notes on Noel Lubenkheimer, and Joe was combing over those and looking at them, and just didn't agree with my treatment protocol at all. And
because part of this was that he was going over to the dorms and treating male tennis players behind your back in the
And
first place.
swimmers, yeah.
And swimmers,
Yeah.
Like in the dorm rooms, treating them because he could get them better than you could, and so he was like doing all this, and you guys were trying to stem that tide of Joe going over and doing that stuff. I mean, holy smokes!
Yeah.
But yeah,
Tony Ortiz and some of those other men's tennis players just egged it on.
Yeah.
You know, they would bring him over and just tell him how great they felt. And how, you know, they just had his ego so built up that he couldn't help but help himself on those. He just loved it.
Yeah. And again, I think his heart was in the right place.
No doubt, and he had a great passion for it.
But it was a little bit risky to be taking care of that stuff as a student on your own.
Well, and in those days you could get away with it. That
Yeah.
would not fly in this day and age.
Oh yeah, that would definitely not fly. So we kind of get to 1996 and the story on that. Let's talk a little bit because whenever Rex comes on the podcast by himself, which is something I want to do definitely in the new year here. We're all at the track, right? We're all hanging out. You know, you knew that Rex was interviewing at Missouri and stuff, and then pretty soon that he's gone. He went to Kroger in Columbia, Missouri.
Yeah.
Was there even a Kroger in Columbia, Missouri?
They had a very nice Kroger in Columbia, Missouri.
So that opens up the spot. Excuse me. What were you thinking when all this is going on? I mean, are you thinking about this? Are you thinking like, hey, I might want to do this? Are you thinking about, knowing you were thinking about other people, I'm sure. So kind of explain your thought process on that.
Yeah. When Rex left, I knew things were going to change. And if things didn't fall right, I knew I could very easily be leaving. And, you know, at that time, Baxter Physical Therapy was still in existence. They eventually sold out to Health South, which ended up going belly up, and
Right.
prison sentences were handed out, and a lot of things happened with Health South. But so I had opportunities to go do other things, get back up to the Fort Wayne area, and like I said earlier, I never really envisioned myself becoming a head athletic trainer. And when Rex left, my first thought was, well, hopefully this will work out, and you know,
Right.
it's gonna happen, and I can just kind of continue on in this role because it was good. Because
Yeah, it was good.
Because Baxter had actually canceled our contract back in 1990, and that's when I became a Ball State employee.
Right.
Just about a little after the time I got certified as an athletic trainer. So it was nice that Ball State took us all back on. You know, I hadn't been, but became a Ball State employee, and Rex, Tony, and either Becky or Trish, they became Ball State employees too at that time. And so yeah, that part all worked out very well. But I'm a Ball State employee now, and Rex is leaving, and yeah, my first thought was things are going to change, and I really don't want to do this. And as the process evolved, and you know, the rumors fly around, and you know, there was outside candidates that they were seemed like they were very interested in. I mean, I think there were close to 100 applications.
I'm sure,
for that position back in that time and era.
Yeah.
And I just, like you said, thinking of the whole program and the best way to keep from upsetting the apple cart at the time, and keep the atmosphere going of you know, taking care of one another, because you know, the compensation wasn't great, but in those days we probably had less turnover than the majority of places, and kept seasoned professionals with us.
Right.
Because of that atmosphere, because of the caring we had for one another. We'd jump in and help cover things or whatever needed to be done if something was coming up. And
Right.
People really needed to get away, we didn't say, well, you got to be there and miss a big opportunity or an unfortunate opportunity that you needed to be with your family
Right.
or friends. So that helped a lot, and I knew there was a good chance that might not continue, depending where it went. So I decided I need to put my name in the hat, and the committee was all lined up. Pat Quinn was
Who was on the committee?
He was the chair. So yeah, on that committee, Bob South from, forget what department he was from, but he was from another department, was on the committee as a faculty person to come in and be on it. But Dennis Springer from football was on it, Kathy Bull from women's tennis, Jay Matchett, Tom Widener, Pat. I might be missing one or two there.
Right.
Oh, and then we had a couple students on it, Kylie Canablo and Deanna Whitty at the time, now Myers. Those were the two student representatives on it. And
do you know who they brought in to interview? Did you ever figure that out?
Yeah. The outside candidates was, again, some names are going to elude me, but Bob, he was up at the University of Minnesota. He was their hockey athletic trainer. I'll come up with it later.
Yeah, that's okay.
But and then University of Cincinnati, Ball State alum.
Pat Grayman.
Pat Grayman, thank you.
Yeah.
And it was from Grand Valley State. He ended up at Grand Valley State and passed away.
Mark.
Not Mark, but he
Yeah.
had the
Yeah.
brain cancer. Yeah. Anyway, those were the
I
three.
got it.
Those were the three. So
Yeah.
three pretty good candidates. So,
Right.
But that committee, I don't think it could have been lined up any better looking back on it from my perspective to be in favor of me. And so Andrea Seeger was our AD at the time, and the committee, I guess, pretty overwhelmingly went back to her and said, they wanted me. So she went with it, and next thing you knew, I was the head athletic trainer at Ball State.
And I think there was a lot of alumni support for you as well. I mean, I know that I wrote a letter, and
thank you.
There was a lot of people
you.
that wrote letters.
Thanks to all of you.
Yeah, to in support of you, just from the fact that there's been a lot of success, and why mess with that successful formula? I think that you at that time, Sean's at St. Joe's, so you decided to bring Sean on, and that was kind of the secret sauce that kind of got everything going. So you bring Sean on. Did you have 1 year with Trish, and then you brought Jen in, or was Jen kind of the same year as Sean?
Actually, Trish was one of the internal candidates, and when she didn't get it, she ended up moving to Georgia and going to, I think it was PA school.
Yeah.
So Trish was gone then, and that's when we brought Jen in. So we brought Sean in right away, and then it took a little bit to get Jen in. But that again, just you talk about people that just clicked and put that success mode and accelerated it. I mean, we were so blessed, and it was great to have such great people come in, and Jen Bednar at the time, now Jen Bednar Herod.
Yeah. So this is how we're going to start this discussion. So how many kids at that time in 1996?
Two.
There we go.
With one on the way.
One on the way, yes. we're in this podcast for reference. We're going to mark the time by the amount of Neal's kids when they came into this world, and we'll kind of stage it up that way. So we had 3 kids. We had Mary, Rachel, and Sarah.
Sarah was on the way.
Sarah was on the way. All right. So you take this job. You also have, you're coming into this 1996 season. I mean, you have a successful football season that year, correct? I mean,
yeah, we were conference champions.
Yeah. So you're kind of
went to the Vegas Bowl.
Yeah, you're kind of like, wow, this is what it's going to be like.
Yeah.
Okay.
Hey, we're going to win championships every year. This is easy.
But there's obviously things that happen down the road with that. I mean, what are kind of some highlights, we'll say to the early 2000s that you kind of remember a little bit with that? I mean, Tony's still on board, so that's still kind of going with Tony and stuff. And what do you kind of remember with some of those highlights?
Gosh, just like, winning the championship in football my first year, which was really just not handed to me, but I mean, just such a great group of athletes. And, we were one play away from being conference champions the year before. So
right.
You just had a bunch of tough kids that, we stayed healthy and avoided major injuries that year. And yeah, everything just lined up. And, Rex had things pretty well set with football that, those guys knew what to do and how to take care of themselves.
So, and remind me, one thing that a lot of people don't pay attention to when we talk about Ball State athletic training, and we talk about this a lot, but when did the sports medicine fellowship start? Was it right around that time? Was it a little bit before that?
A little bit before that. Rex was still there. He and Dr. Tom Severe, they talked a lot. I mean, obviously that fellowship program reached a lot deeper, and Tom did an unbelievable job getting that relationship developed, and Ball Hospital to be the sponsors. That's back in the days when it was still Ball Hospital, and it was just a tremendous program, and obviously Ball State benefited from it.
Right.
Just recently retired Dr. Jared Jones. Yep, was the first fellow, and I want to say that was around 91, 92 maybe.
Yeah.
And then after that, they started bringing 2 in every year. And that program lasted until probably
2000, 2004.
Yeah, you were back. You were back at that time.
I was back at that time. But the thing is that to have that level of, you just talked about keeping people healthy, to have that level of healthcare available to your student athletes to coincide with what you're bringing to the table with experience and knowledge and people. I think that's the thing. Again, you have this great athletic training staff, and then you put that together with a great team physician group with the sports medicine fellows and Dr. Matchett and Dr. Urbanski, with that group at CIO at that time. I mean, you really kind of, you founded this, you were in this place where a lot of people would be envious to be in from a sports medicine standpoint. You had a lot of resources at your availability to take care of kids. And as we know now, that's a struggle. It is a real struggle to try to marry that stuff together unless you're at a research institution, excuse me, that has those resources.
Yeah, again, just really wasn't any of my doing. Rex and Tom had that set up. Tom did such a wonderful job with that, and it was incredible what we had in Muncie, Indiana. I mean, it was as good as anything at the time, like you were saying, in Indianapolis or anywhere else. We had 2 fellows coming over. We had so much coverage for football at that point and basketball. I mean, we had a physician at all these different events, and gymnastics and those were the primary ones, men's and women's basketball, gymnastics and football. But gosh, it was just unbelievable to have those resources and that expertise, because the fellows they brought in were very, very well vetted, and it was an incredible group year after year of the knowledge they brought, and the things they wanted to do, and Dr. Matt Roush came in, and as first a fellow, and then stayed on as Dr. Tom Severe's assistant with the program, and he just was so involved and just so intense, and had so many ideas, and was throwing so much out so fast. It was a little overwhelming, but it was good. I mean, it kept us at the forefront. We were doing some things that no other place was doing, which can go either way sometimes. But we were doing things, and like you said, unfortunately, in this day and age, things just aren't like that. We've had some great resources over the years, and unfortunately, as Ball Hospital evolved and became became part of IU Health System, and some other things that were going on, just the politics of it have eventually led to the fellowship being dissolved. We still had Dr. Matchett, who was just unbelievable for what he brought to our program.
Yeah, future guest on the podcast, Dr. Matchett, if you're listening to this.
Yes. We'll have fun.
We will have fun. I'll let Neal join me. So there you go.
But yeah, so after the fellowship dissolved, we were still so blessed to have the medical coverage we had. But yeah, it just, we didn't have the overabundance, but we were in good shape because we had great expertise and great resources, and
I mean, if you think about the primary care sports medicine physicians that came through that program are there's at least 4 that I know of. Two here at Ball State.
Right, Dr. Jeremy Hunt and Dr. Ken Haller both went through the program,
but
and
you
have been fantastic for us.
You have Dr. Kim Harmon at the University of Washington.
Yeah,
you have who's at Nevada right now? I can't. Is it Mark
Stovak?
Mark Stovak.
Yeah.
And I have not met Dr. Stovak, but he was another fellow that came through the program. Obviously, Dr. Jones, who just retired, took care of Anderson University for years and years and years.
Yeah.
I mean, like you said, the quality of physicians that came through that fellowship, and very reflective of Dr. Severe and how their approach and how they did stuff, was pretty incredible. And so when you look back on that and you see you had that resource to help you get athletes better, it's pretty remarkable. And I think that, as we asked for that highlight, I wanted to highlight that a little bit, because I don't think that gets enough credit or attention when we talk about the history of Ball State athletic training. That was a really special time to have those resources. And even when I came back on the tail end of that, we had a lot of quality fellows that came through that program that are doing great stuff out there. I mean, really. So.
Yeah. No. When you look back and just, I'm just so grateful for the period of time I've been in athletic training. I think it would have been really cool to have even gone back 10 to 20 years and really been at kind of the inception of athletic training. But again, just so grateful to be having had part of such an incredible experience with the students, with the physicians, with the fellowship program, and just from top to bottom. It was a great era, and like everything else, you got to adapt to change, and things are changing a lot, and I think we're going to have growing pains in athletic training for the next 20 years to kind of see where it all levels out and what it becomes. But yeah, I just feel so blessed to have been part of a very special era.
Yeah, and if you think about, we talked about when Rex was here, and you mentioned that the students were the kind of the highlight of that time. I think probably again you would say during this time that we're talking about here, even through your entire time as head athletic trainer at Ball State, the students have been the highlight for you in that. There's a lot of students that would say that you were the highlight of their time here. But do you remember some of the students through that when you started out that kind of made an impression on you during that time? I mean, there's a lot of them, so I get it if you can't remember a few of them.
Well, when I first got there were a couple things. I mean, number one, the students. So I mean, I think we mentioned most of them. Probably forgot a few. The Wilson twins were there, Jan and Van. I mean, just more great stories. But we talked about Brett. We talked about Mark. Talked about Dave. Trying to remember when
but like
Bruce was in that group.
Yeah, but when you started as the head athletic trainer, I mean,
so that first year again, just I mean, the talent that was handed over, to be part of our athletic training program at that time. You had Kylie Canablo, who these were all really good. Deanna and Rob Hunt was in, his senior year was my first year in that role, and Trent Stratton had just graduated, and Dennis Sunderman had just graduated, I believe, maybe the year before. Brian Jones had just graduated, but Brennan, just looking at that list of seniors that year, Melissa Shaw. Trying to remember that picture I had hanging up.
I know that. That's what we needed pictures, didn't we, to remind us of what
did.
we're doing.
We did, but Richardson. There was Dave Richardson, right? He might have already graduated. There was.
I'm going to pause this real quick.
Yeah.
Hang on a minute.
That's good. Part of that group included Kevin Harrod, Casey Richardson, and Stacy John Kovacs. And there may have been a couple others in there. We've mentioned some already, but just such a strong class of seniors leading that way. And again, it was a time that's hard. I mean, you look back on that and you appreciate it more than you knew at the time.
Yeah, because that led to students getting, and you were really working collaboratively with Tom on getting those kids in. Mike was leaving in 1998, correct? I mean,
correct, yeah.
But you had a group that you had Jamie Etzel-Bros.
Yep.
Jason Eckerly.
Yes.
Who was Jason's partner in crime that came from Vincennes? I'm trying to think.
Oh, yes.
Jeremy Payne.
Yep.
Yeah,
Jeremy Payne. There you go. Bringing them all back.
Yeah, I'm bringing them all back for you a little bit.
They might have been a class or two after that 96
early
or
2000.
97 class.
Yeah,
but they were early 2000s. I mean, you get into Sarah McGriff Meserth then at that time. Jason Hines.
Chester Kuhn.
Yep.
Yeah. Tim Lintic.
Yep. Boy,
another podcast guest, Tim, if you're listening.
Yep.
Trying to get you on the podcast. There we go. Who else would have been in there? Come on.
Oh, Sarah's roommate. Got her pictured. There's the picture.
Aaron Foreman.
Aaron Foreman was in that group, but that wasn't the roommate that I was thinking of. It was. For those of you listening, especially Jason and Sarah,
there we go.
You'll remember that name.
The off the roll contest is name the student athletic trainers from 1996 to 2003. If you can name them all, then you'll get whatever new apparel that we're going to have out. Off the roll, a hat, Well, you get a free bowl of soup with that hat too while you're at it. So there you go. I don't know. It's hard, isn't it? I mean,
Yeah.
For even me, for the short time that I've had the times in my career that I've had students, to remember every single student is hard. It's really, really hard. And then you throw student athletes on there, because I forget what somebody asked me at my job the other day, like, do you remember what do you remember as your most significant injury or something like that? And I have one kid that had a C1 fracture when I was in Indiana State, but you start adding up all these people to try to remember names that you don't see every day, or you don't think about every day, or you don't run into. It's hard to kind of draw back on those memories to remember that. I just don't have that much bandwidth, is what they would call it, to try to drum that up. But however, if I was in a room with them or saw them real quickly, I could probably bring them up real quick.
Yeah. Or just hear their name mentioned, and it just brings back great memories.
Yeah, exactly. So we're kind of almost halfway through your career. I guess we could call it halfway through, and then okay, there's part one of the Neal Hazen podcast. We got through 17 years, or a little bit more than that, of his career. The second part two, will be the latter part. And just for you that know, Neal's still employed at Ball State. He's just on medical leave at this point, and who knows what could happen. There's lots of possibilities out there for him. Obviously, he could retire if he wanted to, but still kind of staying in the loop, just trying to see what his opportunities are with that. So we'll learn more about that in part two, and looking forward to hearing from you on your feedback. Regards via email at offtherollpodcast@gmail.com, or on Twitter at our Twitter account, or on my Facebook account. You can just email or direct message me on what your feedback is for the podcast, but or text me. Those of you got my phone number, some of you can still text me on that too. We appreciate the feedback on knowing what's going on and how you're feeling about the podcast. So part two coming right up.